Hey friends, this is Ryan with Arrows of Love, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter on December 21st. So we've had a lot happening in the sky over the last month. We just went through this total solar eclipse in Sagittarius on the 14th. Venus just moved out of Scorpio and its detriment and into Sagittarius as of the 15th. And now we're gearing up for the great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter moving out of Capricorn and into Aquarius. So today, Saturn's finally done in its home sign of Capricorn. It's in Aquarius at 0 degrees. And Jupiter is making its final transit of those last minutes of Capricorn when it enters Aquarius on December 19th. Jupiter is going to speed up. It's the faster moving planet, and it's going to catch up to Saturn on December 21st for the great conjunction. There's a lot happening with this conjunction. It's a rare event. It only occurs every 20 years where the two meet up. So it's important to understand some of the intricacies of these two planets and what they mean in ancient astrology and modern astrology, and what this signifies for all of us on a collective scale. So let's first talk about what this conjunction is really all about. So Saturn and Jupiter meet up every 20 years. And if you take a look at their rotation around the sun, they meet up in the same element, meaning earth, air, fire, and water, for about 160 to about 200 years. So over the last 200 years or so, Saturn and Jupiter have been meeting up in earth signs, and Capricorn happens to be the last one of this particular elemental wave. The interesting part is Saturn and Jupiter will give us a little flavor of the next wave right before they change into the next element. So back in 1981, Saturn and Jupiter met up in Libra, an air sign. So let's think about what happened during the 1980s, because it's going to give us a little flavor for what we can expect over the next 200 years or so. Being that Aquarius is also an air sign. So first of all, let's first talk about what's happened over the last 200 years, because I think this will be instructive for what we, just the general themes and flavor of what it meant for Saturn and Jupiter to meet up in Earth. Earth is a physical element. Since 1842, that's when the Earth wave started to occur, where Saturn and Jupiter started to meet up in Earth signs. Let's think about what happened during the 1840s. During that decade, the Mexican-American War took place. There was the gold rush. There was expansion out west. William Henry Harrison took office and caught pneumonia while giving his inaugural address and ended up dying in office 30 days later. We see the expansion. We talked about the expansion out west, but we also saw the coming of the industrial age. So it had to do with mining for gold, minerals, oil, coal, gas. So you can see how these play out over the course of 160, 180, 200 years. The industrial age was very much about exploiting Earth's resources to build up civilization. That motive is going to change over the next 200 years to the air signs. So that's Aquarius, Libra, and Gemini. Saturn and Jupiter gave us a little preview of what we can expect back in the 1980s, as I had mentioned. So let's think about what was happening in 1981, because this is actually very telling. The Rodney King riot started. There was racial tension back in the 1980s. That's very similar to the George Floyd situation that happened in 2020. There was a resurgence of NASA. NASA had always been around, very popular, but at the time they had first flown it was the first flight of the space shuttle, which is a reusable spacecraft that could come back to Earth after it was done in space. There's similarities to Elon Musk and SpaceX, and he has a reusable engine that essentially floats down to Earth and they catch it in the middle of the ocean. So you can see the parallels there. There's also the coming of the first personal computers, so the dawn of the technology age. And then there was also a royal wedding. So Princess Diana married Prince Charles in 1981. And the interesting thing about that is, Saturn and Jupiter were in Libra, and Saturn is exalted in Libra. So it's crowned there. It does very well in Libra, and Libra happens to be about partnership. So it's kind of like a royal regal wedding. So there's themes that you can see throughout the 1980s that you're going to see again over the next 20 years, but really over the course of the next 200, when you start thinking about the themes of Aquarius and the air signs. Again, Earth is the physical realm. It's the tangible. We're creating, we're using our manifestation skills to create here the tangible. But air is different. Air is about the intellectual. It's about science. It's about exploring the reaches of the universe. So I suspect we'll see a lot more from SpaceX, the International Space Station, and the James Webb Telescope that's going up to work in tandem with the Hubble Telescope. So I think we're going to see another resurgence on the space front over the next 20 years to 200 years. Let's talk a little bit about Aquarius and Capricorn, because the dynamics happening here are fascinating when you start thinking about ancient astrology and mythology. Before Uranus was discovered in the late 1700s, Saturn and Jupiter were the last two planets that are visible to the naked eye for thousands of years. So Capricorn is traditionally ruled by Saturn, and it's also ruled by, Saturn also rules Aquarius. So those were the traditional rulers before Uranus was found. Jupiter was co-rulers of Sagittarius and Pisces. So this is dealing with the last four signs of the zodiac. And when you start thinking about the zodiacal wheel and the progression through it, you're starting in Aries, it's the spark, it's the fire, it's the initiator, the pioneer, and you make your way through each of the signs. You start getting into more complex areas once you start reaching Sagittarius. Sagittarius is high-minded, it's the philosopher, it's the adventurer. And think about the sign that comes before Sag. It's Scorpio. So you're going deep. You're dealing with your darkness in order to rise above as the Phoenix, where you now have different personal beliefs and you want to go further with Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is a very philosophical sign. It's represented by the archer and the centaurs, half man, half beast. And there's different symbols that you can take with that too. But when you start moving along after Sagittarius, which is the 9th house, you move into Capricorn, which is the 10th house. And the 10th house is typically, astrologers say this is a point of attainment. And the reason for that is Capricorn sits at the top of the zodiacal wheel. So at this point, this is where you present yourself to the public. This is your achievements in life. This is the culmination of your physical presence on this earth and all that you're doing. So Capricorn, and it also rules karma. And Saturn rules this area. It's the last visible planet. So it's basically, this is the point of culmination before you go into the unknown, before we knew that Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto existed. So really, when we start thinking about, Capricorn and what is Capricorn all about, it really is reaching the top of the mountain. So, there's different symbols, glyphs, and stories about Capricorn. It's an ancient constellation that was around during Mesopotamia. So this has deep roots in all of human history. So the Greek mythology around Capricorn is that Saturn, who is the Roman god, the Greek equivalent is Kronos, the Titan god, and he was son of Uranus. And basically Uranus, was the ruler until Kronos decided to take a sickle and castrate him and cast him aside. We don't actually know what happened to Uranus after that. But Kronos, or Saturn, basically takes over and is king of the physical realm, if you want a little bit of the mythology around that. And then, of course, Zeus or Jupiter come in and basically overthrow Kronos and Saturn, who are the same in both mythologies. So you can kind of see the interplay between Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter, son, father, grandfather, essentially, if you want to think about it like that. So there's a little bit of this hierarchical archetype that's kind of playing out here. So you have father and son, Jupiter and Saturn, sitting in Capricorn, the home sign of Saturn. This is the point of attainment. This is a point of maturity. This is a point where we clear our karmic debts, those that are owed to us and those that are owed to others. So we're going to start to see this marked shift in collective consciousness away from more of the tangible, material, possessive world and into this more intellectual, air-like quality. And a good way to really put this into terms of what air is all about, it's high-minded, but you can't trap air, right? You can't trap air in a bottle. It's going to escape. So if you really want to think about Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, at least on a personal level, those individuals can be hard to lock down in a personal relationship because they need the freedom. They need to be able to travel and expand the intellect. And depending on the sign, they have different missions in life. Gemini is all about learning. Libra is all about relationships. And Aquarius is all about the collective and humanity and groups. So these themes are going to play out tremendously over the next 200 years. But in this case, from 2020 to 2040, the conjunction occurs in Aquarius at 0 degrees. So let's talk about a little bit about Aquarius. Aquarius is the 11th house. It's the house after Capricorn, which is the 10th house of attainment. And now we're moving away from the physical reality of attainment and achievement and determination. Saturn's also associated with restriction and delay and hard lessons and karma. And now we're moving away from that into its co-ruled sign of Aquarius. And here, Aquarius is a masculine sign. It's more thought-provoking, whereas Capricorn is a feminine sign. It's actually more nurturing. If you want to think about Capricorn, I think Capricorn gets a lot of bad rap for astrology because it's supposed to be the CEO of the zodiac, always working, not concerned about family, emotionally unavailable. Those are typical things you hear, but that's really surface level. When you really look at Capricorn, take a look at its glyph. It's the sea goat, and it's associated with the god Pan in Greek mythology. And Pan is the one that helped defeat the Titans when the Olympians and Zeus were going after Kronos and team. So Pan basically scared the Titan Typhon when it was running into the water. It's this half goat, half fish mythological animal. It's God in and of itself, but it helped defeat the Titans essentially. So there's this, it's half goat climbing up the mountain. We always hear that about Capricorn, right? About attainment, climbing the mountain to attainment. But once you get to that level, it's actually quite lonely. And what happens in Capricorn is you go through this massive need to prove yourself, right? That's what Capricorn's all about, achievement and really being the standard bearer of what it is that we're all supposed to achieve in this lifetime at some point. But really there is the spiritual element to Capricorn that's often forgotten with the fish of the tail, because as the god Pan scares off Typhon, he merges into the water as the fish. So, and that's symbolic of spirituality and getting in touch with the ethereal. So really, you want to liken this maybe to the Hermit card in astrology, where you ascend to the cave, the top of the mountain. It's quite lonely at the top, and there you really find yourself and your inner light, and you descend back down into the mountain, into the water, where you reach spiritual enlightenment. So that's the deeper meaning of Capricorn. And if you want to look at what's happening around the world right now, there is isolation with COVID-19. You have to remain isolated as an individual to help the collective. So these are themes that spill from Capricorn into Aquarius. And really what I think 2020 was really all about was we were meant to be alone to clear out the karmic debris that we have accumulated over the last 20 years. So it could have been felt very heavy, especially with the solar eclipse happening right on the South Node. The South Node's associated with the past, so things could come back that you thought were resolved, but really there's some karmic debt to be paid there. It's all a transition period, essentially, out of this Capricorn energy, which can be really heavy. It can be really difficult to get through, and it's supposed to be. It's at the top of the zodiacal wheel. It's not meant to be easy to get to the top. But through this isolation period, we come out the other end enlightened and having a spiritual awakening. So through that, and the association with water and spirituality, you'll see that throughout the last three signs of the zodiac. Pisces being the fish, Aquarius being the water bear, and Capricorn being the goatfish. Sorry, I'm just blanking at the moment because I'm trying to give you guys as much information as possible. The sea goat, thank you. That just came to me. You want to think about what that means. And, those last degrees of every sign is a point of maturity, especially the last degree, 29. It has special meaning in astrology. So if you have any planets or any points sitting at the 29th degree, it's going to be activated by this transit into Aquarius. So, you want to think about how we are now transitioning. It's a slow shift, right? These are slow-moving planets. It's at the outer realm of what we can see visibly. And then beyond that, now we are moving into Aquarius. And Aquarius is the water bear. And I think this is a little interesting. The mythology around it is fascinating. The water bear is associated with Ganymede. And Ganymede was a Trojan prince, apparently just an absolute stud, and even the gods fancied him. And the god of all gods, Jupiter, Zeus, fancied him the most. So the story goes that Ganymede was swept away by an eagle, Zeus's manifestation into the physical world, and brought to the land of the gods, Mount Olympus, where he would later basically be the water bear for the gods. It was the nectar of the gods and the food of the gods that he basically was kind of like a servant in a way for the gods. So he basically lives in immortality now, even though he was human. So there's this weird demigod play with Aquarius and what it's all about. But it's the return of the flowing waters back to humanity. And that's really what Aquarius is all about. It's about humanitarian efforts. It's about the group. It's about your social networks and friends. It's about the collective and raising the collective consciousness. So when you start thinking about the two heavy hitters of our solar system moving into Aquarius now, Saturn being a co-ruler of Aquarius, and Jupiter gaining dignity in Aquarius, because Jupiter right now is still sitting in Capricorn, and Capricorn, it's in its fall position. So Jupiter doesn't necessarily do very well in Capricorn, and you see things like the 2008 recession. That was the last time Jupiter was in Capricorn. Now we saw the pandemic, and you can go back in time and trace some of these larger global and national crises to Jupiter being in Capricorn, because it's in its fall position here. Jupiter gains dignity as it moves into Aquarius. And again, the liking here has to go back to Greek mythology, Zeus coveted Ganymede and took him for himself, essentially. So, Jupiter, being Zeus in in Roman mythology, coming into the constellation of Aquarius, which is represented by Ganymede, you can see where all of a sudden now, you pick up this dignity and you get a little bit more of the benefic gifts that Jupiter's supposed to bestow when it's in the sign. So we'll see this play out over the next year. Jupiter transits each sign for about a year. It's going to cruise through Aquarius very quick and even into Pisces, and it's going to retrograde back later on in 2021. So we'll likely see some really great innovation over the next year and signs of what we can anticipate over the next 20 years until the next great conjunction occurs in 2040, excuse me. But it's going to take a while because Jupiter and Saturn are still aligned. And Saturn co-rules Aquarius with Uranus. And this is kind of an interesting dynamic too, right? We talked about Kronos castrating Uranus and throwing him out. That's kind of the father and grandfather tiff of Greek mythology. They're mortal enemies. And they're actually going to meet up in a square throughout 2021. So we're going to kind of see this authority power struggle play out between the two titans of the universe. Uranus is the sky god. Aquarius is associated with the sky. And then Saturn, who co-rules Aquarius with Uranus, it's going to be a push and pull because Saturn is tradition, it's convention, it's the status quo, and Uranus is the future, it's innovation, it's science and technology. So you're going to see this push and pull, 2 steps forward, 1 step backward throughout all of 2021, and those two meet up in a challenging position throughout all of 2021. February 17th, they meet up first, and then Saturn's going to retrograde back and hit the square again. That's going to occur in June 14th, and then they're going to finally meet up for the last time in December. So you'll see this theme play out 3 times. So whatever's happening on those particular days, pay close attention because you'll see this theme play out. This kind of weird authority, new future, do we stay in the status quo throughout all of 2021? So you can liken that to politics, you can liken that to personal relationships, things going on at work. It's going to be a push and pull with authority all over 2021. And which direction do we really want to go in the future? What is the new future even going to look like? But the promise is high because Aquarius brings in the new future. And also keep in mind that Uranus works through shock and awe. So it brings in change, sometimes very suddenly. There's also history behind these 2 planets meeting, Saturn and Uranus, and creating earthquakes or even potential explosions. Volcanic eruptions even. Uranus is sitting in Taurus, which is an earth sign. Saturn's sitting in Aquarius, which is an air sign. So when you think about these 2 titans meeting up, sometimes we might see natural disasters at some point in 2021. It's an occurrence that facilitates a change for the collective, essentially. If you start thinking about Aquarius and what this is going to mean for all of us, it's also about hopes, wishes, and dreams. Aquarius is represented by the star card in the Tarot. It's about wishing upon the star, right? So there is a silver lining to all of this. I think we will definitely see a push and pull, 2 steps forward, 1 backward in all of 2021. It's going to take a while for us to get through COVID-19. We're going to see a lot on the vaccine over the next couple of months, probably all of 2021. It's going to be a major talking point, especially with science and innovation, right? We're going to see this theme play out time and time again over the next 20 years. But specifically for 2021, the vaccine is going to be a topic of conversation. Aquarius is also about the collective, and we've seen this kind of creep up, right? Even in politics over the last few years. We saw the rise of a socialist party in the United States, and socialism is connected with collective endeavors and being a part of the group. So I would expect to see more on this over the next 20 years, and really for maybe this a faction to rise within the United States, where we start really thinking about not so much capitalism and exploitation, which is very much earth, economy, Saturnian themes, and now more about what does it mean to really be an individual in the United States and as a citizen of the world, and what does it mean to be a part of the collective and really doing something for our environment and for our collective being, so we make sure the human race still exists over the next 200 years. I think we'll see these themes play out significantly again over the next 20 years, but space exploration is likely to be high, technological innovation is likely to be high. I would say the issues with race aren't going to go away. Uranus is also associated with rebellion, so we very well might see some surges throughout the world to topple the status quo, like the Saturnian energy. That's very traditional. So we will likely see uprisings throughout the entire world, especially as Saturn makes this square over to Uranus and stubborn Taurus. So this theme plays out. Mars is going to meet up over there too, and Mars just adds energy and that fire energy to all of it. So 2021 is shaping up to be a very interesting year as we play out the rest of 2020, and the themes of COVID, being isolated, wearing masks, science, where does it fit in society? These are all themes that are going to play out significantly. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a little taste of what we can expect over the next 20 years and 200 years as Saturn and Jupiter make these conjunctions throughout the air signs. Again, it's all about intellect, 5G, space exploration, expanding the mind, and coming into this great awakening. And again, some astrologers say this is the age of Aquarius, others say this is a human-made construct. I think it's probably somewhere in between. Moving out of the elements of earth and into air is significant, and the fact that it's happening in Aquarius, I think, it just adds a little bit of oomph to this theory that we're moving into this age of Aquarius, where it's a little bit more about the collective being and humanitarian efforts as opposed to capitalism and exploitation. So that's just my 2 cents of what it is we can expect. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and we're going to get back to the love and relationship readings, but we have to talk about Saturn and Jupiter because this is an event that we won't see again, at least in Aquarius, and an event we're not going to see in Capricorn in our lifetimes again. So we have some really big astrology happening right now. We're going to start feeling a lift as Saturn finally has moved out of Capricorn. It's a heavy burden to bear for all of us. Saturn's the taskmaster and karma, essentially. So as we see Jupiter move forward and gain speed through Aquarius, we're going to start to see the benefits and the karmic gifts that we've been working on since 2017 when Saturn entered Capricorn back in December. So, 3 years of karma that we've been clearing up essentially for all of us on some level, depending on what house Capricorn fits into your natal chart. So if you've done the work, you're going to be a cosmic winner. Again, I hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you like these videos, please subscribe, and we will talk to you next time.